Down to business.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Whiskey Musings broadcast. I am your host, Rick. So, sorry, I'm a little out of sorts tonight, only because of the fact that I sort of ended up not realizing what time it was, so I had to scramble to kind of get some things going here. But I am here, I am live, and I am in HD for you. Let me know that you're in the chat. A couple different places here. I've actually got all my streaming spots, Twitter feeds, Facebook, and YouTube all up and running. It looks like everything is coming through. So hopefully you'll be able to take a moment and drop me a line in the chat. The other thing, too, that I wanted to let you know that I haven't spoken out about over the course of the last couple of episodes is the fact that you can also email me. You can drop me a line at the email address of rick at whiskeymusings, all one word, .online or .net. And both of those places, the email will get to me. So if you have a question or a comment or, just want to rant and rave about something, maybe a topic suggestion, something along those lines, please feel free to go ahead and do that. Also, don't forget to subscribe, not only to my Facebook page, but also the YouTube channel, so that you can get alerts and everything else when I go live, so you can actually see what's going on and hear that I've popped up live, and hopefully you'll be able to catch up on all the shows as I live stream. Otherwise, you can check out past shows on the YouTube channel. Definitely have everything there, and also I'm not sure if you can do it on Periscope TV. I think you can, but you can go and check that out as well. All right, so now that stuff is taken care of, I had a couple opportunities this week to kind of take a step back in my own life and a little bit of memory gathering, I guess you could say, from my perspective. And one of the things that I happened to pop in with, as far as like my memory, is the fact that, for some of you that know me, you know that when my son picked up in soccer, when he started doing soccer, I took over the coaching duties, and I started coaching soccer for my son and his friends at a very young age. Granted, I only took them so far because obviously there comes a certain point where somebody has to realize that they've overextended their bounds. But that being said, I have been fairly active within the soccer community with regards to my son and his friends for the most part. And one of the things that I've had the pleasure of doing, obviously, is watching these young men that I have been coaching, that I have coached, that I've watched be coached as they've moved on in their lives and gotten further and further. And of course, my son's graduation this past spring has given me a chance to kind of take a look back. Well, another wonderful thing that happened this weekend is a young gentleman who I used to coach a long time ago. Unfortunately, he and his parents moved away from the area, so I haven't seen him as much in his later years as what I did in his earlier years. And I will have to admit that I am extremely impressed with the way this young man has turned out. He is very polite, respectful. He has a great attitude on life. He knows what he wants to do. And considering the fact that we have challenges going on, especially with universities and starting things out, he's got a good idea as to what he is doing with his current situation and where he is moving into. The thing about it is, though, is that this young man was well, he was very memorable out of the several boys that I've coached over the course of several years. And, I am so glad and so blessed that he has been able to stay within our lives, that he and my son have been friends for many, many years, even over long distance. And just to have him come here and, want to come by and meet back up with us and with the family and everything, it was really good seeing him. So I'm extremely happy about the fact that happened. And one of the things that I think it made me reflect on is that sometimes we don't know, as people, we don't know how influential we may be in somebody's life. And we don't know that even just the slightest touch on somebody's life as to how much that can affect them and change them. And I'm not taking any credit here. I really don't. But I want to just reiterate, because as we were going back through certain memories and things like that, there were things that he remembered from back then that were, things that I necessarily didn't remember right away. I mean, obviously I did remember afterward, but it's interesting when you look at it from a different perspective, not just the perspective of you, but the perspective of the other person when you've influenced something within their life. And to be able to sit there and look at this person and realize that, even if it was fairly inconsequential and very small in terms of an impact, that it is incredibly important to some people. And there are people that have been in my life that, I've looked at, and not necessarily that I've looked at them as mentors or something along those lines, because some of them have been very brief. But to understand the flow, how things work from a mentoring, a coaching, even just sitting and talking with someone and dropping a little bit of knowledge, or taking the time to actually care about somebody's life and what they're going through at that particular time, whether it's happiness or, otherwise. It's just it's amazing to really sit and look at how impactful we can be without even knowing it. And from that kind of brings me to the point of understanding like the next generation behind you. So last week we talked about careers, and I was mentioning that from a perspective of careers, that, going to a college, like your traditional 4-year school, isn't necessarily always the best thing. And we had a caller come on, and he kind of described how he fell into his particular job. And I know I've kind of fallen into my particular job, and that sometimes there's things within our lives where we don't necessarily start off in the position of what we want to do with our lives. But to understand and take a look back at your life and your past history and think about some of the people that may have influenced you in certain ways and impacted you. And it doesn't even have to be like a parent. I mean, I know, like, obviously our parents are like very influential in our lives. At least you would certainly hope so. But even then, it doesn't need to necessarily be that way. It could be something as simple as being a coach, or a mentor, or a teacher, or, just somebody in life that takes a moment out of their day to react and respond to something going on, and to discuss with a child or a young teen or something along those lines, just to reach out and take a moment and be the caring person that other person may not necessarily meet. And that goes across like all ages and, everything else that goes across, all ethnicities, backgrounds, whatever you want to call it. The point here is that if we all just sort of took an extra moment to understand that there are times in our lives where even just the slightest touch can have a huge impact on a person's life, that going into that kind of a scenario makes it to where maybe we're not quite as negative or quite as brush offish, I guess would be a good way to kind of put it. To understand that the intricacies of the world itself and how people interact with one another in many different fashions and how they interact with you is something that I think that potentially could be a really big thing, and it could make a huge difference in somebody's life. So that pretty much kind of sums up, like, you know, what I had to deal with, or what I dealt with throughout the week. There's a lot of things have changed. I wasn't even sure that I was even going to broadcast tonight, but I changed my mind. I decided to come here. So in that, I am going to basically reach out to you and say, you guys can impact my life by spreading the word about the show and talking to different people about the show. And if you like it and everything else, recommend it to somebody else. I seem to be stuck. I seem to be stuck at like 12 subscriptions on the YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, let's go ahead and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you've got going on, because to be honest, this show without you pretty much is just me talking to a camera for no reason. And I definitely don't want to carry that kind of thing on. So with that said, we'll get to the actual topic of the evening that I was planning on discussing. So last week, sorry, a little parched. So last weekend, we got together with some family, and, you know, obviously as families do, we started talking about different things. One topic that came up was one of the family members had purchased a new car. Now, this car has some of that new technology in it where you can actually set the thing and release the wheel, and the car essentially within reason drives itself. Now, I know that everybody's seen those commercials. Everybody's seen like the self-parking cars, the self-driving cars. You know, they have the commercials all have the car driving down the road, and you see the person, you know, tentatively take their hands off the wheel, and they show the wheel kind of tilting back and forth and things like that. And the other thing that I think I've seen, I mean, down in Phoenix, Arizona, this is a really big thing to see the self-driving Google cars running around, and all of the tests and everything else that they're doing with that. And even though they have somebody behind the wheel, the car itself is the one that's driving, that kind of thing. And so that actually brought me to the thought of how much of trust do you have in technology, and especially this self-driving technology, this artificial intelligence? How much of trust do you have in this technology? And I know it's very fledgling and everything else, but realistically, I mean, if you take a look at it, there is a drive to kind of go there. And a lot of people think, oh yeah, you know, we're going to have self-driving cars, and where you get in and you just, like you see in the movies, where you just get in and you tell it the address, and the robot cabbie, this is in Total Recall, you know, the robot cabbie turns around and asks where to go and that kind of stuff. So I want to know from my listeners and watchers, how trustworthy do you think you are with these things? And does it give you a measure of further control, or is it something that you really don't like? And so to answer that question from my perspective, I'm going to let you know, I mean, I've gone around and I've rented cars, and some of the cars have had some of those special features. Now, they haven't necessarily had all of those special features per se, but I have had things like lane assist as an example. Now, for those of you that don't know, what lane assist basically does is it detects when you've gotten too close to the line of the lane when you're on the highway. Now, usually it doesn't do this. I mean, it kind of depends on the car, but usually it doesn't do this unless you are really, really close to the line. But at the same time, it also won't do it at low speeds. It's kind of like, okay, the car manufacturers have sort of figured out, all right, low speeds, we're not going to worry about it too much because, let's be honest, low impacts and things like that, accidents, there isn't that much risk necessarily to life in that particular case, because obviously all of these are touted as safety features. But I submit to you that I'm not entirely sure that these things are really all that safe. I think, in my opinion, they kind of give you a false sense of security. It's kind of like having a backup. You look at it as, oh, I'm the primary source. Well, sort of. It's kind of like autocorrect, if you think of it that way. I mean, autocorrect started with the idea that you could type, and on on YouTube, on the YouTube chat, I did a spelling error. I actually put the wrong word in for what I was stating on the YouTube channel. So autocorrect in some cases has given us a crutch to work with, and autocorrect allows people to misspell words and things of that nature. And it was originally used or designed, I believe, as a backup, a preventative method for when you made an accidental miskey. But now people are using it, and I think a lot of people are actually using it as such, that they're using it as their primary resource when it comes to figuring out how to spell words. So with that in mind, moving on to things like lane assist and the automatic braking, the latest technology, or the latest Nissan commercial has automatic rear braking. And so when you're backing up, that's a really big deal, is that it automatically brakes when it comes toward it. I don't know if anybody's seen that commercial, but you got to ask yourself, are these technologies and these capabilities, are they really good for us, or are they more of a crutch? Are they something that we are going to develop into a crutch? And I think a lot of that has to deal with how we view them and how we go toward them, and how we address them, how we use them. Because let's go back to the lane assist thing. I'll tell you the story real quick. So I was driving in another state, and I had a rental car that had this lane assist on it. And the lane assist, again, the idea is if you get too close to the line, it's going to go ahead and try and redirect you back into your lane so that you're not weaving all over the road. And while in concept, this sounds like this would be a great idea, I also wonder, though, if it's, again, a crutch, number one, but number two, is it really that great of an idea? Because I can tell you there were times where I had to try and avoid somebody else creeping into my lane, and the car sensed that I was getting too close to the left-hand line, and it tried to force me back into my lane when all I was doing was trying to avoid either an obstacle in the road or another car or something along those lines. And so as I was going, I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing literally almost got me into an accident, because the wheel forced itself back into the lane no matter what I did. I mean, I physically felt the wheel pushing back in. And so I was sitting there after the incident, I mean, I slowed down so the other car could do whatever they were doing and, get further down the road. I did the whole defensive driving thing, keeping distance, that kind of stuff. But after it occurred, I thought to myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, what would have happened had I not been paying attention and that thing actually pushed me into the other car? So when I could safely, I went and found a way to shut the damn thing off, because that actually kind of drove me nuts. And then the other thing was, I also noticed, because this was a longer trip, but I got into a space where it was construction, and so they didn't have very well-defined lines. And so there were a couple times where the old lines were there, the new lines, temporary lines for the lanes were over here, and the thing kind of got a little bit confused and tried to, push me in either one direction or the other, even though I wanted to stay within the lanes, the proper lanes, as the way the construction thing went. And so it was very interesting to me to have experienced that in the first time that I have ever done that to where I felt like I was potentially in a situation where if that thing had really done what it was supposed to do, so keep in mind, this is doing what it's supposed to do, but it would do it in such a way that it would potentially cause an issue with me as the driver behind the wheel. So from my perspective, I think that the braking thing, that's cool. I mean, being able to understand that if you're distracted in traffic, this thing automatically brakes when the radar gets there. That's great. The idea that you see from like Subaru or whatever, where they first came out with it, if you remember, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, where they had where it actually sensed the accident that was occurring in front of the vehicle that they were behind. So, it was like a vehicle in front of the vehicle that was getting into the accident, and it would brake. That technology is great. I think because of the fact that, first of all, people get distracted, they can't see, whatever the reason, so stopping fast enough, and our reaction times too, especially at high speeds, are a lot less than somebody would be or the computer would be, because it makes the decision in nanoseconds versus, our having to process and engage the mind and get the body moving and the muscles and everything else. So stuff like that I can understand. But this whole concept of being able to drive down the road and release the steering wheel and let the steering wheel turn the car, to follow the road and keep you within a lane, or, whatever that happens to be. I'm a little nervous about those things. And so I'm not entirely sure if these things are necessarily, I know they're safety features, but I really don't know if they're safety features that are 100% vetted out and 100% completely safe. Just because of this, and again, keep in mind, the specifics of it. It's the specifics of the situation that are really going to make the difference in terms of whether or not this thing actually interferes with your ability to drive and react to a situation, or if it actually allows you or does for you what should be done in that situation. For me, I tend to be a little bit of a control freak. If you ask my family, I'm the one that always drives whenever I'm in the car. I can't stand to be in the passenger seat. And the reason why I can't stand to be in the passenger seat has to deal more with my control issues than with anything else. And I tend to get, in some cases, driving with some people, even though I know they're completely safe, and I trust them to be able to drive safely, I still get this feeling of oh my gosh, in certain situations when things like speed going too fast. I get the same thing on roller coasters. Give me a break. If I can't be in control of the speed, it tends to give me a little bit of an anxiety, and it's gotten worse as I've gotten older. But that being said, losing that control and having a computer actually making those decisions for me when it comes to certain things like lane infringement and stuff like that, I honestly, I don't feel safe and I don't feel comfortable with those things. Some people might say, oh, well, you're kind of chalking that up to age or whatever. Which, I'm going to be honest, there is a little bit of that too, because, and especially given the industry that I'm in and dealing with computers, and I see computers, viruses, things make mistakes, hackers happen. Hollywood doesn't help with all of the things that they do. And so realistically, I just don't know if I'm quite 100% ready to get over to the point where I could just crawl into a car and tell it where to go and trust that the computer is going to do what I tell it to do, to go and take it to the car or take me to wherever. Or in the case of the newest safety features on these cars, having them available, I think, is great for those that want it. But getting into a vehicle that has these things and have them go wrong, I think it's a bit scary. It really is. And I know there's some people out there. There's some people out there who actually are, like, oh, I welcome our robot overlords kind of idea. I mean, that's like the quote. But I'm wondering. I have a bit of a apprehension when it comes to those things, to be able to trust it. I mean, shoot, I don't even trust true cruise control. Holy smokes, that was hard for me to say. But I don't even trust cruise control in some cases, because I've had it where I've tried to hit the brake and it hasn't responded fast enough, and it's given me that feeling of dread as I'm, speeding up to come in behind this car that's in front of me that's all of a sudden slowed down really, really fast. Now, again, that being said, I am perfectly fine with the whole braking idea. I think that's great, because what you're doing from a scientific standpoint is you're taking a part of the human condition and you're speeding up the process of somebody going and recognizing that you have to stop. And it's known that the human reaction times, especially when it comes at speeds, can be deadly. So those safety improvements I understand. But this whole concept of having to steer the car for you is the part that I think I have a problem with. I think I do. I have an issue with it. Now, they haven't perfected it, as one listener has popped up here in Facebook. They haven't perfected it yet. And this is true. They have not perfected it yet. And that's shown in like the Google self-driving cars, the accidents that they have gotten into, sometimes to a sad result. But at the same time, though, I'm kind of questioning. I mean, are we maybe taking it too far? Are we maybe taking the dependence on technology and the crutch just a little too far in this case? I know that computers can make decisions faster, and they do it without emotion and all of these things, but they're not infallible either, because it's humans that program them. And so that's where I think we kind of have a little bit of an issue with some of these things. Now, everybody's heard of the stories of the Google cars and stuff, and not the ones that go around and take all the photos and map out the streets. Those aren't really necessarily the ones, at least I don't think they are. But those ones that they go and they actually drive you wherever you want to go, to get to that point. And I know it's not just Google that's doing this. It's other companies as well that are doing this too. And I know Uber was like interested in that. But which is true. I mean, Uber would be interested in it just from the standpoint of, hey, if we can have self-driving cars, then we don't have to necessarily have to worry about drivers. And I guess eventually we'll get there. But anyway. So, okay, so we've got a note here in the Facebook chat. Backup cameras are great, but they took off the self-driving cars down in Phoenix, since they did have an accident. Now, I'm going to ask this question of you, since you know. Has there been any communication or any kind of recommendation in terms of bringing them back? So is there anything in terms of testing to bring them back in? I mean, is it just a temporary thing, or have they indicated that at all in any way, shape, or form? Now, backup cameras, this actually brings up a really good point. Backup cameras are frankly awesome. I did take, I got one as a Christmas gift the other year, and I put it on my truck. And my truck's a big truck, full size pickup, and so backup cameras actually help quite a bit, for being able to see. They're not perfect. Again, They're not perfect. Nothing it seems is perfect. And sometimes I wonder if they just release these things, even though they're not perfect, only because of the fact they're like, good enough is good enough. Let's, really start testing or whatever. The idea of putting in a very small camera, fisheye camera, on the back of your vehicle so that you can at least see if something's behind you. And that's cool. I mean, the one that I have is actually in the license plate frame. So it really helps when I'm backing up and trying to hook up a trailer, because I can totally see the trailer hitch in the frame, and I can back up, without assistance in most cases. It looks like, okay, so they have been talking about the self-driving cars, bringing them back, but definitely not soon, which I would assume kind of makes sense. I'm going to throw this out there too. So let's see. Did they have any legal ramifications from the accident? There. And I misspelled ramifications. See? Now that's a spot where hey, autocorrect would have helped. Well, I saw the little squiggly red line, so I mean, it's my fault. It's a human being, human error. There we go. Human error. Isn't that a wonderful thing? So anyway, for those of you that are just kind of listening and not really watching the thing, or watching YouTube or whatever, I do have the call-in number. The call-in number is area code 360-309-0997. And for those that are not aware, I actually do have 3 actual lines for the call-in. So if I am already talking to somebody, you can call in on the number, and it'll just put you in hold, and you can just listen to the conversation that I'm having at the time. And then you'll hear essentially how that works is you'll hear a beep, and it will allow you'll recognize that you're in the conversation directly with me rather than just listening to the show. So once again, 360-309-0997 if you have a comment about this. Okay, so haven't followed it to that extent. Well, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. I was mainly just curious because, I mean, realistically, other than the fact that we heard about the incident, I haven't really heard anything from it. And I called it an accident. It's actually an incident. Accidents are things that are not preventable. Incidents are preventable. So, when you hear somebody talk about a automobile accident, it's basically saying that they don't think that the collision was preventable. Sorry, that's thrown on like the OSHA definitions, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration definitions of things that happen on the workplace and that kind of stuff. So you'll have to excuse me for that. But anyway, so we have lane assist, those little lights that blink in the mirrors to let you know that there's somebody alongside you in your blind spot. Those things, those are actually cool, but they can get annoying, especially if you're in traffic and there's a lot of people, or you're just driving slow and there's a lot of people driving by. Any of that kind of thing. It's so you have the lane assist. I will have to admit that the blind spot warnings, those are actually kind of cool, especially when you're in a bigger vehicle and you may not be able to see everything that's right up next to you. That's a really cool little feature, and I actually like that. I like the braking. The braking's fairly cool. I had an opportunity to test it. I was playing around. I just wanted to see if it worked, if it was working. I did a function test, let's say, on a rental car, and it actually worked quite well. So that was pretty cool. But then what other things do we have that are out there? So you have the front braking. Now you've got rear braking, which actually the rear braking would be really cool, like they show in the the I think it's the Subarus that have it or something. They have that one where the kid is like walking behind the car and the car stops. Now that's pretty cool. I mean, just to have it on a stationary object is one thing, but to have it on an actively moving object would be something else. Something else. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. All right. So I have a caller. So give me just a second here. I got to figure out where'd my cursor go? There it is. Okay, so I have a caller. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this caller in. Hello there, caller. And I'm going to Wyatt. You went ahead and threw your name in there. So welcome to the program. First time caller I know. So what is it that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I was listening to what you're talking about, and so, like, you're talking about how the blind spot lights have, like, the feature, like, my mom's Audi, like, she has that.
Uh-huh.
I think it's really cool when, like, the light does blink, like, especially during the night, and, like, the car that's passing you may be pretty dark out and all that stuff. Like, I think that's pretty cool, and I agree with you when you're saying that some of this technology, like, it's very useful, but also there's some of the stuff that gets kind of annoying. And with the way that how these self-driving cars and just the automobile industry, like, we really gotta make sure that we're heading in the right direction and not, just going downhill and
I'm right there with you. I mean, there are certain things that I think have come out on cars, like you said, the blind spot warning. Now, I mean, for me at night, I don't know about you, but for me at night, it's usually I take an indication off of the fact that there's headlights there. But you can't necessarily go with that all the time because there are idiots that drive with their headlights off. But that being said, I mean, the blind spot warning, that makes sense because it is a failure of the human being or maybe the car manufacturer. They have given you a spot where you just cannot see. But things like the lane assist and keeping you in the lane, I mean, wouldn't that... Now, let me ask you this. So first of all, do any cars that you've driven, have they ever had like the lane assist on them?
No, but I know some people that have like Tesla, stuff like that have the lane assist.
Starting to lose you on the cell phone here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me anyway, I mean, as far as like the lane assist is concerned, like I was telling you before, I mean, I almost got into an accident because of the lane assist. And, I just think that some people, you would use that kind of technology from the lane assist idea to actually, take advantage of it, like being able to, oh, well, I know the car is going to keep me in the lane, so I'll just go ahead and just text right now so I almost think that in some cases people can go ahead and take advantage of this without realizing that there are some dangers involved with this type of technology.
Yes, that's very true, because it's almost like cruise control. Like, sometimes you'll just get too into it, maybe get a little lazy, but the moment, like, you have to act or use your brake, like, it could be too late, like you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cruise control is cool because at least for me, it keeps it at a constant speed. So I'm not constantly, going a little too fast, a little too slow, or maybe maybe the car doesn't get out from under me and I end up getting a ticket or something like that. So cruise control is pretty cool in that sense. But to have the vehicle be able to steer itself and keep you within a lane, it's almost like some people, and I believe there actually have been some news reports where it's, the person went ahead and went to sleep. They were like, oh, I'm kind of tired, I'm going to take a nap, and the car is going to just keep me in the lane, and I'm just going to keep going. I don't know if this is really such a good idea.
Yeah, I've heard about those stories. Like, there was a story down in LA, and like they had to put like a cop car in front of the car on either sides in order to like stop the vehicle, because like some of those cars have the autopilot mode. And so I agree with you. There's still a lot of kinks that need to be sorted out.
Yeah,
In order
absolutely.
for this to be like a safe and reliable thing for us to use in the future.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely, and unfortunately, like I said, I think everybody, or at least the manufacturers, are in such a rush to try and create the next big thing that will differentiate them from other manufacturers to get you to buy the car or buy the vehicle just because of the technology. That sometimes I think they get it to a certain point and they're like, okay, well, we can live with whatever else happens, and we're just going to go ahead and throw this out there. It's kind of scary that people would, or that manufacturers would actually do that, but I have a feeling that they sort of have those conversations in the boardroom. But anyway, so
Yeah.
do you have anything else to say?
No, like I was just saying mainly that I agree with you, like on your stance on it.
Mm-hmm.
Just I kind of wish they would kind of go through more of a prototyping process rather than just like throw it out there for people to use. Like I have no doubt that they test what they do, but it should definitely be more road friendly and user friendly, and so that people don't almost get into that accident like you were talking about and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. Right there with you. Well, thanks a lot for calling in. You have a wonderful evening.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Bye. All right. Bye.
So yeah, so I mean, again, there's another individual who definitely kind of agrees with me in terms of that sense. So that was pretty cool. Thanks for the call, Wyatt. Appreciate it. Nice to talk to you, and nice to talk to any of my listeners, of course. So let me go ahead and. So the phone lines are back open. They were open before, but 360-309-0997. So what else? Is there any other? I can't really think of. Oh, hey, here's a piece of technology when we're talking about autos that I actually 100% agree with on this stuff. Over in Europe, they implement a thing where you have to have a dash cam, a dashboard camera. And while, they started, the technology really started off in police vehicles, and putting in dashboard cameras in police vehicles was tantamount to basically having an eye and a disinterested third party when certain incidents would happen up in the front of the car. And when police started doing this, it was really pretty cool. But one thing that sort of generated out of that was the persistence of people who go and they put it in their cars. Now, as in a personal vehicle. Now, over in Europe, I believe, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe it is a requirement to have those in the car. And the reason being is because of all the accidents that they do get into over there, because realistically, I mean, I've driven in some European countries, and it's interesting to say the least. But I think that doing or implementing something like that here, it would be incredibly beneficial, because you would have essentially a disinterested third party that ideally would be able to see the angle of the incident, and you would be able to, rather than relying on human recollection of an accident, you would actually have video footage of it that you could give over to police, or you could use as a part of your defense to show that, hey, somebody hit me. Now, that being said, I don't have one yet, because unfortunately those things are, in some cases can be a little expensive, and there are many of them out on the market now. So you kind of have to look at what the technology is available and for the cost, what it is that you want to implement. But having a dash cam, I think, is a great piece of technology. They also have them in parts of my research. They also have them to where if the vehicle gets bumped when you're not there, so if the car is parked and let's say somebody hits you, the camera will actually come on and record the video from the moment that it feels or that it senses the impact. And that's technology that I think is pretty cool as well. Now, whether or not that's, you're going to prevent somebody, or just by having one, you have a target in your car because somebody can go and break the glass and steal the camera. I do think there are some downfalls with it from that standpoint, but realistically, I think dash cams are actually pretty cool, and especially the ones that are, the 360-degree dash cams. Now, I can also say with relative certainty that here in the U.S., we value our privacy. And so understanding that we're on camera tends to make some of us squeamish. But at the same time, though, the law has really, truly stated that, if you're in public spaces, you can be on camera without permission from whoever the third party is. And so that's part of the reason why you have security cameras and things like that in public spaces and that type of stuff. But the car, depending upon where you go in terms of the states, the car itself may not be public spaces. And I know here in Washington, at least for audio, you do have to tell people that they are being recorded. Unless that law has changed, which if somebody knows, feel free to reach out and correct me. But you do need to let people know that they are being recorded, and you do have to get their permission. Now, for video, I think it's a little bit different because you can post signs up saying, "Hey, you're on video, video surveillance, video cameras, whatever." You're able to see those signs, and so you've been forewarned. Kind of the idea. It's like, hey, you're on camera, you've been forewarned. So I think from that angle, you're definitely looking at a potential where putting a camera in the car has a bit of a protection. But I think that the systems, maybe in order to make them more affordable for people, they do have the one downfall where it could get stolen and therefore the footage goes away. It would be kind of cool if it had the ability to, say, send the footage up into the cloud via either a hotspot connection maybe to your phone, or possibly a cellular connection that you would pay for, that it would automatically send and upload that stuff up into the cloud. So if it does get stolen, that you will actually not lose the footage. And I know there are some camera companies that are out there that are doing this for regular security cameras. Some of the more enterprise level ones, expensive ones for commercial buildings and things like that, they are doing this. And they have storage on the camera as well as what's up in the cloud as at the same time, so it prevents things like this from happening. But I do think that putting in dash cams is definitely something that you should do if you're a driver to protect yourself. And I go ahead and I say that, and obviously I don't have one yet, so obviously this is, in this particular case, do as I say, not as I do. But anyway, so dash cams and, obviously the blind spot warnings, the backup stopping, the front stopping, those are pieces of the technology in the auto industry that I think are really great. Being able, this is another one that now I don't have this, and your mileage may vary, but this is another technological feature in terms of vehicles that I think is definitely helpful, although it still is a bit distracting. Being able to read your texts or emails. So the voice reading of texts and emails coming in. And you've seen that. I can't think of the car company that does it, but they have one that you hear it and it says, especially if you have a Apple device, Apple seems to have more of a corner on the market for this kind of thing, rather than, Android. But Android does have Android Auto, I think, and that is that's one that is available. But from the Apple standpoint, you're able to have your texts or your emails read to you while you're driving. And so the idea is to keep your eyes on the road, and not have it get not your distraction or distraction-free driving. Subaru kind of mentions that they have distraction-free driving for teens, where if your eyes come off the road, they will go ahead and yell out a warning or something like that. They'll start beeping at you. Some of those features I think are pretty good, but realistically, if you are a licensed driver and you step behind the wheel of that vehicle, like I've told my kids when they're driving, the idea of you, first of all, having a license, and second of all, stepping behind the wheel of that vehicle, you are responsible for not only yourself and not only the vehicle, but everything around that vehicle, everything in that vehicle. You are responsible for the safe operation of that vehicle, no matter what happens. So, you've taken on the responsibility to step into that car. You've taken on the responsibility to get that license. And by doing so, having that privilege, you have to understand that there is an accountability and a responsibility for you as the driver, as well as anyone who rides with you. So the rule that I've put out is when you're the driver, you pretty much have the command and control. You sort of think about like the captain of the ship. That person has command and control, and I will definitely bow down to that individual if they say, "Hey, your music's too loud, it's distracting," something like that. I will go ahead and make sure that whatever I'm doing, I stop it, and that's the way that it should be. Because when you step into that vehicle, you are in control of that vehicle, and everything else that goes around it is going to be your responsibility. It is all on you. And that's the importance. That is a huge responsibility, especially when you consider this thing is potentially a multi-ton vehicle that can kill. And we're able to go and do this. We hand out these licenses to kids and everything with all of this technology and all of this power and everything. And we hand it out to them. And we wouldn't ever think of like handing them, say, a handgun or a rifle or something without safety training, without understanding the ramifications of what you're doing. So doing it in a vehicle, I think it's a vehicle is more readily available, but it's also just as dangerous. It potentially can be, because you can not only kill or maim you, but you can also kill or maim anyone who is outside the vehicle at the time, anybody who might be in another vehicle at the time. So it is extremely important when you sit behind the wheel of that vehicle that you understand that by doing so, you are basically saying, you can trust in me. I will not fall asleep. I am not driving while impaired. I am making sure that you and anyone else that is in this car, especially me, with this vehicle, we are going to get where we are going in as safe as a methodology as possible. We are going to be safe inside this car. I'm going to operate this thing safe. I'm going to make sure you guys are all safe, and I'm going to get there. So that to me, getting behind the wheel of a vehicle is the most important thing. And so having these things, these additional technology things that are either preventing it or causing issues or getting you in trouble with, especially when they go awry, these are crutches. And especially when you look at it as a crutch from your perspective in terms of your responsibility. So, again, some of the things that are out there I think are great, but others I think we need to work on. And hey, I want to give a shout out to YouTuber here, Michelle in Ohio. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate you coming on and saying hi. I know you from another channel that I frequent occasionally. So, hello, Michelle. Thank you, especially considering that you're a couple hours ahead of me. So it's a little bit later where you're at than where I am. And I also want to say thank you to the people that are on the Facebook page as well. Thank you for joining in and watching over everything. I appreciate you. I appreciate, obviously, this would not go forward if it weren't for watchers and listeners. If I put together a show and I just put it into the blank pages, I mean, we're looking at, just to let you know, we're on episode 20. I mean, I never even thought that I'd be doing an episode 20 is kind of, it's a milestone. Every single episode that I come out from here on forward, it's a milestone. And it's all because of the fact that I do have followers. I do have people that are there. I'd like to grow that. I'd like to get that much better. So if you have suggestions or whatever, let me know. Let me know. Like I said, at the first part of the show, you can email me. You can email me, Rick, RICK, at whiskeymusings.online and .net. I will get them on each one. If you have a suggestion for the show, if you have a comment, concern, challenge, whatever it is, definitely reach out, please. I also am transmitting on Periscope TV. I haven't really seen too much action over on the Periscope side in terms of people watching or chatting in the chat. So if you're there, definitely raise a hand, throw me a heart, do something to let me know that you're there. But anyway, so back on the subject, I mean, just to kind of recap everything I've been talking about, because I am coming up to my hour mark. My opinion, I have a little bit of a control problem when it comes to a lot of these things, but there are things out there that I think are great. Technology obviously is making our lives better, but there are times where technology tends to take it a little bit too far. In my particular case, in tonight's topic, it's talking about auto improvements, things like the front braking, the rear braking, the blind spot warnings, backup cameras, things like that I think are awesome. But things like lane assist and letting the wheel go while you're driving down the highway, I'm not quite sure I'm ready for that. And I'm certainly not ready for the automatic driving car. But anyway, so that's my opinion. That's tonight's show, and I appreciate everybody for joining. Remember to subscribe. Go to my YouTube page, Whiskey Musings. And you might even find it under Whiskey Musings Broadcast as well. But go to my YouTube page. Sorry, Michelle just mentioned, she goes, just more things to break sensor-wise. You are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct. I mean, yeah, that's another topic for another day. But that being said, go to my YouTube page, subscribe there, please. I'm at 12. I'd like to get more subscriptions. Please go there and subscribe. If you don't subscribe there, definitely hit me up on my Twitter page. Twitter is actually Musings Whiskey, not Whiskey Musings. Somebody else had the Whiskey Musings already there, but Musings Whiskey on Twitter. My Facebook page, I do have a Facebook page up. It is the Whiskey Musings Facebook page, so you can go there and you can drop me a message there. Other than that, I'm going to bid you good night. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I appreciate it. If you like my broadcast, you like what I'm doing, definitely subscribe and let everybody know that I am here on Saturday nights. Sorry, not Wednesdays, Saturday nights. 8 p.m. And I know if you've missed some of the older episodes, go back to YouTube and check them all out there. You have a good weekend. I hope everybody is safe from the hurricane that came through. That was something I meant to mention early on, but I hope everybody is safe. And if you are, I hope everything that you have, you're able to get your life back together and everything. That's absolutely horrific. Big, huge hurricane coming through. It's like one of the biggest, I think, on record for landfall in the U.S. But anyway, our hearts go out to those people, and I hope that they are able to pick up their lives after this horrific natural event. But anyway, we will talk to you later. Thank you again for everyone for joining, and we'll talk next week right here on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night.